Hi friends, I am Dr. B.V. Rao of Usha Clinic and founder of the websites qmedicaldoubts.blogspot.com and raghavamedicaldoubts.com. Through these videos, I am providing the basic knowledge about the commonly occurring diseases, treatment and surgery details when necessary for the medical knowledge to general people and for reference to medicals. Today I am going to discuss about the purpurium and venous complications. The venous complications in purpurium are the thrombosis and phlebitis of superficial and deep veins of the upper and lower extremities. The varicosity is already present in the parts are inflamed when the superficial veins are affected. Venous thrombosis is divided into simple thrombosis, phlebothrombosis, inflammatory thrombosis. Thrombophlebitis is phlebothrombosis may become thrombophlebitis by inflammation. Phlebothrombosis. Here the intravenous clotting occurs without previous infective lesion and with minimum inflammatory reaction. The thrombi are loose and liable to become detached and cause a pulmonary embolism. It is more common after gynecological operations than in purpurium. It occurs in legs in two forms, superficial and deep. When the varicose veins are present, superficial phlebothrombosis forms in these veins. The thrombosis may sometimes spread up the saphenous vein to the femoral and iliac veins, and then embolism may occur. Of course, it is rare. The onset is about the 4th or 5th day of purpurium. There may be slight rise in temperature and pulse rate. The affected veins are hard and tender to touch. With the rest and antibiotics, the condition usually subsides within a fortnight, often with obstruction of varicose veins. Deep phlebothrombosis begins in the deep veins of the calf or sole and extend upwards and is usually symptomless. Sometimes the patient may complain of pain in the calf or sole and is tender on exerting pressure. Sharp dorsiflexion of the foot elicits pain in the calf. It is called the Homan's sign. Of course, it is not always present. There may be slight rise in temperature and pulse rate with no apparent cause on the 7th day to 10th day of purpurium. The condition manifests when pulmonary embolism occurs or when generalized edema of the legs sets in. If the embolus is a large one, the patient presents a classical picture of sudden pain in the chest, dyspnea, cough and blood-stained sputum. Auscultation reveals a pleural rub and an area of consolidation. Radiograph of chest shows a wedge-shaped shadow. In massive embolism, death occurs within few minutes. Thrombophlebitis. It is effective in nature. The primary site is usually the uterus. The organism concerned is the anaerobic streptococcus. Anemia predisposes to this type of infection. It may occur in the femoral vein by a retrograde spread from the pelvic thrombophlebitis or by direct spread from adjacent cellulitis. It may also be extension of thrombophlebitis of lower leg. Embolism is not common in this condition because as a result of infection the thrombi are adherent to the vein walls. There is always surrounding periphlebitis. It starts in the 2nd or 3rd week of purpurium. There are chills, fever and pain along the affected segment of the vein. Edema of the whole leg follows rapidly. If the condition primarily affects the femoral vein, the swelling usually begins in the foot and spreads upwards. There is pallor and coldness in the swollen legs due to the secondary arterial spasm. There is tenderness and induration along the course of the femoral vessels. The symptoms subsides with treatment. The edema and the constant pain in some areas, some cases may persist. This condition is also called phlegma alba dolens. Suppurative thrombophlebitis. Suppurative thrombophlebitis occurs primarily in the pelvic and may extend into the thigh. It is cause of pyemic abscess, particularly in the lungs. The clinical picture is characterized by the repeated rigors with swinging temperature, high pulse rate, severe toxemia and metastatic abscess. On vaginal examination, tender thrombosed veins may be palpable. Treatment. When venous thrombosis has set in, immobilization of the affected leg may not be necessary. Antibiotics are administered to minimize the infection. Anticoagulants are given to prevent further clot formation. The patient is confined to bed with a cradle over the legs to prevent pressure from the bedclothes. The foot and the bed is elevated to increase the venous flow from the legs. It is recommended now the physiotherapy starting with the passive movements started as soon as the diagnosis is established. When afebrile, the patient is encouraged to walk about with the affected leg supported by an elastic bandage. Prevention. Prevention consists of treatment of any factor which favors thrombosis like anemia, trauma and sepsis. Exercises in early purpurium are said to be beneficial. Anticoagulant therapy. Heparin is given intravenously in an initial dose of 15,000 international units and its administration is continued by intermittent injection of 7,500 to 10,000 units 6 hourly or by continuous intravenous drip of 15,000 units in a liter of 5% glucose or normal saline at a rate of 70 drops per minute. The object of this treatment is to maintain a blood clotting time of 15 to 20 minutes. The clotting time is determined by the Lee-White method. The antidote to heparin is an intravenous injection of 10 ml of 1% protamine sulfate, which will restore normal clotting time. Along with heparin, an oral anticoagulant is given. Once immediate control with heparin is obtained in 24 to 48 hours, oral anticoagulants only are used. Promexone is commonly used at a dose of 0.3 grams tablets by mouth 4 hourly and the first day followed by plus or minus 3 to 0.6 grams daily in divided doses, sufficient to keep the prothrombin level at 20 to 30% of its normal value. Dindivon, a cheaper anticoagulant, has been recently introduced. The dosage is 100 milligrams at the first day followed by 50 to 100 milligrams daily as determined by prothrombin type. Anticoagulants should be discontinued when the prothrombin time rises above 45 seconds. When pulmonary embolism occurs, antibiotics and anticoagulant therapy is started at once. For pain, morphine, and for respiratory distress, oxygen should be given. Lumbar sympathetic ganglion block. The reflexes arising from the affected venous segment cause a reflex spasm in the homolateral arteries and vessels. By anesthetizing the lumbar sympathetic ganglion and chain, the reflex arc can be broken, which relieves the pain and promotes vasodilation in the affected leg. The cold swallowing leg becomes warm and the pain is relieved as a result of a relief of vasospasm. The technique is to inject 5 ml of 1% procaine hydrochloride through each of 4 needle punctures aimed at blocking each lumbar ganglion. There is immediate relief of pain and the prompt subsidence of fever. As well as the decrease in the size of the swollen limb. If the patient fails to respond to general and antibiotic management, especially in suppurative thrombophlebitis, ligation of the thrombotic veins may be indicated. Cerebral venous thrombosis. It is also a common condition in spite the pregnancy and labor is most cases normal. The time of onset is between 4th and 20th day after delivery. The first symptom is sudden onset of coma or fits. The fits may be frequent and the fits may be frequent and with increasing fits the coma deepens. After other symptoms depend upon the site of the thrombosis. If the motor cortex is involved, there is a complete paralysis of one limb and weakness of rest of the body. The cerebrospinal fluid is usually normal but may contain a little blood. The condition is often mistaken for postpartum eclampsia. It is not common to occur postpartum eclampsia after 48 hours. Treatment. The treatment is to prevent the further thrombosis by anticoagulant therapy. Control of convulsions by sedatives and keeping up the general strength by supportive treatment. Physiotherapy for paralysis muscles is required. Postpartum pituitary necrosis. This rare condition is followed by the severe postpartum hemorrhage with a marked fall in blood pressure, resulting in thrombosis in blood vessels supplying the anterior lobe of pituitary gland. It results in ischemic necrosis of whole of the lobe. A thin rim of tissue may then survive at the periphery of the pituitary gland. In most severe cases, death occurs soon after delivery. In other cases, the patient survives to develop the typical clinical picture of hypopituitarism described by Simons as pituitary cachexia or Sheehan syndrome. Symptoms: complete failure of lactation due to lack of lactogenic hormone. It is followed by symptoms due to lack of thyrotropic, corticotropic and gonadotropic hormones. The patient is lethargic with anorexia and abnormal sensitivity to cold. She may gain weight and the basal metabolic rate is reduced with an increased glucose tolerance. Genital atrophy occurs with amenorrhea due to superinvolution of the uterus. There is also atrophy of the breast and loss of pubic and axillary hair. Anemia may occur, which is similar to that of the myxedema. Treatment. It is important to treat the collapse due to hemorrhage promptly in order to prevent this condition. When the necrosis has occurred, treatment with thyroid and suprarenal cortical hormones may be tried, of course. And in the next video I will discuss about some other disease. Thank you.